Hi folks, Dave, the Honest Audiophile. This is the Tin Hifi DuDu, and this is the LetShuoer S08, and this is the ARTTI T10, and these are my Honest Audiophile impressions. I want to thank Tin Hifi for sending over the DuDu, and I want to thank LetShuoer for sending over the S8, and I want to thank ARTTI for sending over the T10. Do greatly appreciate it. Tin Hifi, LetShuoer, and ARTTI, you all rock. Alright, so the Tin Hifi DuDu, this will set you back $99 from your bank account. If you get the commemorative edition, which is the edition that I am going to be reviewing today, that will set you back $130 from your bank account. It has 13mm planar drivers, 32 ohms of impedance, 103 decibels sensitivity, and a frequency response range of 10 Hz to 20 kHz. The LetShuoer S08 will set you back $100 from your bank account. It has 13mm planar driver, 26 ohms of impedance, and 105 decibels of sensitivity. And then the ARTTI T10, this will set you back $80 from your bank account. It has a 14.2mm driver, planar driver, a 16.5 ohms of impedance, and 96 decibels of sensitivity. So the Tin Hifi DuDu. The box contents are very, very simple. I do like the box though. You get a little panda here on the front, a little bit of branding, some information on the back. When you open it up and you slide it out, you get this little box. This is very similar to most Tin Hifis. Nothing special here. You get some paperwork and then just an area for your DuDu to sit. The stuff that you get with it, and keep in mind this is the commemorative edition, so you get two cables. You get a cable that terminates into a USB-C, and then it has your 2-pin connections and an inline microphone, and it also has a built-in DAC. And then the other cable that you get is your standard 2-pin connection. And then you get several different types of tips. You get your blue foam tips, and then 2 types of silicone tips. One that's a little bit shallow wide bore, and something that's a more normal grape olive shape. So it's a nice little package that you get with the DuDu, but no carrying case. The LetShuoer S08, it comes in this black box with a S swirl on it, some specs on the back. Nothing special at all on the inside. The only thing that you receive is this carrying case, which is like a hockey puck shape. It does say LetShuoer on the front of it. It unscrews, and then you get some tips which come in this little ring, and you have a balanced and vocal tips. Both sets of the tips are somewhat wide bore tip. The balanced tips are a little bit more shallow, and then the vocal tips are a little bit more longer. And then you get a swappable termination for the cable. It comes with 4.4 and 3.5. We'll show that to you here in a moment. So here's the swappable termination and cable. You just spin and then pull off and then reattach. So it's a nice way of connecting your swappable termination. We'll talk about the cable more closely here in a moment. The T10 comes with nothing special on the inside. It's pretty basic, just like the Tin Hifi, but you do get a carrying case which says ARTTI on it, hard shell. Unzip it, and it does have a pocket up here for some accessories, and then you have a nice little strap to hold everything in place. You get 2 types of silicone tips, the shallow wide bore tip, and then a more olive grape shape tip. I do like the fact that they provide a little carrying case, which is nice. And then you get a cable that terminates in 4.4. We'll talk about cables now. So the cables for the Tin Hifi DuDu. The cable for the Tin Hifi DuDu is this. It's a tangled mess. It's very thin. It has extremely weak ear hooks, and this applies to both USB-C and the 3.5 version. Those ear hooks are terrible. It does connect with 2-pin, and it's thin, lightweight, tangled mess, and it's just, when you bang it up against things, you can hear it. It's very, very, very noisy cable. It's not a very good cable. I really don't like this cable, other than it's thin and lightweight. And the inline microphone works well for the other one. Also, the DAC amp powers it very well. I had no issues and complaints. It'd be a good on the go. It does sound better connected with the wired non-online or inline microphone cable, but it's not a huge difference depending on what your source is. This could be a go-to sound for the USB-C and inline mic. The S08, this cable is very nice. I like the way that the ear hooks have enough tension on them. I'm not a big fan of this preformed QDC 2-pin type of connector, but this one's not too bad. It's a little bit curved and fairly comfortable. Has a nice cinch, and then with that swappable termination that I showed earlier, this cable is well built, feels very, very quality, has just enough thickness to it, and yet is still lightweight. Overall, it's very well controlled, and it fits the price tag. The ARTTI T10's cable also has nice ear hooks. Connects with your standard 2-pin. Has a nice cinch to it. A little bit stiff and hard to pull. Definitely stays in place. And then you have 4.4 balanced termination. The cable is about as thick as the S08 cable. Fairly well controlled. It is a little bit more tendency to tangle than the S08 cable, but they're both very, very well controlled. Build of the DuDu. The Tin Hifi DuDu has a teardrop, and they are just a big, huge metal chunk. They do have a little bit of branding on the faceplate. They are rather thick, and has a very smooth backside, a short nozzle. They're very heavy. They feel quality built. I mean, they don't feel like they're, cheaply made or that they're going to fall apart or anything. They're just really, really heavy and thick. The S08 is somewhat of a odd shape, kind of a sideways. I like the faceplates, very subtle branding. They've got this like kind of wavy S thing going on. It's kind of cool. They are also a little bit on the chunky side. They do have a somewhat smooth back. There's a little bit of ergonomics, a very, very subtle wing. And then there's this step up, which is sloped, which is nice. Overall, they do feel very quality, nice, and I have no concerns about them being durable. And then the T10. Now, the T10 is a extremely odd looking shell, very small. It's somewhat of an odd shape that you have to get used to. Has a very plain faceplate made of plastic. It's not the most premium looking of IEMs. They do feel a little cheap in the hand. They definitely look somewhat cheap. They're very small, smooth backside. It is somewhat sloped, and it has about an average nozzle length. It's a little bit longer than both the S08 and DuDu have. Isolation, comfort, fit. So the DuDu, The stock tips did not work for me. I could not get a good seal with any of the stock tips for the DuDu, and I found that they just didn't hold them in my ears properly. They are so heavy, and then with this flimsy cable ear hooks, they just weren't very comfortable. I found that a longer tip, something like the Triclarian, worked well, and that it helped to kind of hold them in place a little bit more. But even when I put them in my ears, they were still uncomfortable, even with the Triclarian tip. The benefit of using the Triclarian tip for the most part was just holding them in place. I found that I can listen to them for about an hour before they became uncomfortable. Isolation of outside noises isn't really that good, probably somewhere about 60% of outside noises being blocked. It's going to muffle most loud things, but you can still kind of carry on conversations with people in louder vehicles and louder things around the house. You're definitely still going to hear, even though they are muffled. The S08 is another IEM that the stock tips didn't really work for me, and so I again used Triclarian tips. Now they're not near as heavy as the DuDu, but they are fairly finicky when it comes to placement, so you kind of have to just move them around in your ear and get them in place. Once they are in place, they are rather comfortable, and you get a pretty good seal with them. Not anything spectacularly good, but it is slightly better than the DuDu, and I found that it's probably about 65% of outside noises being blocked. You can still hear louder things. A little bit difficult to carry on conversations with other people, but it's doable depending on how loud they're talking. I found that comfort-wise is better than the DuDu, and still not the greatest. It's about an hour and a half, and then I have to take a break. The T10. Now the T10 is a very, very odd fit, I will say. And again, it's another IEM in which the stock tips did not work for me. And this time I had to use the SpinFit W1 tip, longer, and it just sat in my ears properly and gave me a good seal. I was, with the stock tips, unable to get a good seal or get them just to sit in my ears properly. Now you do have to really move these around to get them in place, like the S08. But I find that they're slightly more comfortable than the S08, definitely more comfortable than the DuDu. I can wear them for about 2 hours before they start to get uncomfortable. Isolation on these is not very good. It is probably about 50% of outside noises being blocked. You can definitely hear things around you. Carrying on conversations with people is very, very easy. And loud vehicles and loud things around the house, definitely it's going to be heard. This is not a good isolating IEM. It is better once you get a tip that works, but it's not really that good. Comfort-wise, though, is spectacular once you get them in place and all that. Source pairing. So all three of them are somewhat demanding. They all scale with better sources and better power. But it's not to say that you have to give them a ton of power in order to sound good. They just scale with more power and better quality devices. Any dongle was able to get them to volume, and DAPs and desktop worked very well. None of them really were very sensitive to higher output impedances, so they all play on pretty much anything that you present. It's just a more power, better quality. It's going to bring out a little bit more from all three of them. The DuDu is a little bit more sensitive to the presentation, and it has a more tendency to sound better on a warmer device. Putting that on a cold analytical device is going to make the DuDu sound more fatiguing. So I would be very careful if you're using DuDu, use something that is warmer. The T10 plays well with pretty much anything, and the S08 really is more content on a neutral, more slightly analytical leaning device. So I preferred the S08 and T10 pretty much on anything, but the S08 does perform slightly better in my opinion with a slightly more neutral leaning analytical device. Be careful of the DuDu though, it is extremely finicky. So how do the DuDu, S08, and T10 all sound? The Tin Hifi DuDu is a interesting listen when it comes to the bass. It has a little bit of rumble and grumble, but it's kind of limited. Really only shows itself when called upon in a track, and then it's very, very, it's not a very real impactful rumble and grumble, real noticeable. Mid bass is there, but it is a very light impact. It's not a real hard hitting type of bass, even though it will kind of get the toes tapping and the arms flailing a little bit if you're an air drummer, but for the most part it's not really a heavy hitting, hard hitting type of bass, and it leans more to quality over quantity. Now the S08 on the other hand is authoritative. It has a nice control to it, impactful mid and upper bass regions. Sub bass has nice rumble and grumble. It's gonna reach down deep to you, and overall it has a nice balance of quantity and quality, and it stays very, very controlled. I was rather impressed at that, and the amount of impact, punch, and slam that is included with it is very authoritative. And then you have the S08, or excuse me, the T10. And the T10's sub bass has a nice rumble and grumble, a little bit more than the S08 has. And also the mid bass is very impactful. It has a lot of punch and slam, a lot of kick, and it's a very fun and engaging type of bass. It does lean a little bit more to the quantity than the quality. The mids of the Tin Hifi DuDu are very forward. They are borderline aggressive. They have a lot of brightness to them. They are peaky, unbalanced, and uncohesive, and they're prone to sibilance. The DuDu is a very aggressive sounding forward, very pushed mid range, especially in the upper mids. They can be very shouty and aggressive. If you're sensitive to upper mid presence, the DuDu may not be something to consider. The S08 has a very full, warm, controlled, very natural sounding, balanced and cohesive mid. Everything sounds very balanced, plays well together. There's not any of this peakiness, shoutiness, and forwardness to it. It has a proper balance and placement, and is very well controlled. The T10 on the other hand is a little bit more forward, not near as forward as the DuDu, and has a nice full engaging type of sound. It does have slightly random moments of sibilance, and it could be considered a little bit bright for some, but for the most part the T10 is just a very engaging and full and a very warm type of listen, and it's a very enjoyable mid. Upper presence can be slightly sibilant and bright at times. If you're sensitive to upper mids, T10 may be borderline for you, but I don't think it would be too much. Treble. The treble of the DuDu is very extended. It has a vividness to it. It does have a hotness also, and it is overly energetic. It does have a lot of maximum sparkle, and it may be too much for some. I do find that the DuDu is a little bit too much for my ears, and I love treble, but to me it was just a little too exuberant, a little too much sparkle and energy, and it had this vividness about it, and it had those moments of hotness, and it just came across in a somewhat aggressive type of presentation. The S08 has a very extended treble, just like the DuDu, but it is controlled. It's balanced, it's very cohesive, it's a very even-keeled energy, and it has nice sparkle. It's on the edge, it's on the border of going too much, but it never really crosses over, and it doesn't become fatiguing like the DuDu. I find that the S08 is a very nicely extended, has good air, nice sparkle, and good energy while staying even-keeled, balanced, and cohesive. And then the T10. I find that the T10 has nice extension, and it's nice and vivid. Does have moments of hotness, and it may be borderline for some if you are sensitive to the treble, but I don't think that the T10 is going to be near as aggressive and fatiguing sounding as the DuDu. The soundstage of the Tin Hifi DuDu is rather wide. I'm quite impressed at how wide and how deep it is. It does a really good job of giving you a sense of what's going on in the stage. You can really diagnose the placement. It does a good job with imaging. It's pretty close to being precise. I wouldn't say that it's laser perfect, but it is pretty right in here, and you can move and follow things across the stage very well. Also has nice layering. It does a good job of keeping everything separated and giving it its own little place. It's a stage that you can really diagnose and follow things that are going on. Detail retrieval is very, very good, especially for its price point, and it also does a really good job with resolution. It is a little bit distinct and a little forthright in its presentation, but it does a good job of giving you all the information if you really want to dissect a stage. Tone and timbre of the DuDu is somewhat thin, and it doesn't have a lot of note weight, and at times it has some metallicism to it, especially in the upper, mid-range, and treble regions. The S08, the soundstage of the S08 is not near as large as it is on the DuDu. It is more of a natural stage. It does a very good job of giving you a more accurate, precise idea of width. It does a good job of portraying different sizes and venues from small, medium to large. It doesn't really ever get into that grand, big, huge size. Has excellent depth and good layering and a very good job of imaging. It may be just slightly more precise than the DuDu when it comes to placing your details and being able to follow them and track them. Detail retrieval is excellent, just like the DuDu, and also resolution is very, very good. I was rather impressed at how refined, defined, and focused the S08 is. It's not quite as forthright and distinct as the DuDu, but it still does a really good job. And then tone and timbre is very natural, has nice note weight, and a very accurate reproduction of instruments and vocalists. The T10 is very good with its stage width. It really presents a nice stage and lots of air and space, and also does a good job with depth, and there's okay layering. At times it can get a little confused on bassier, heavier tracks or more complex tracks, but for the most part it keeps everything separated and isolated out. And then it does a good job with imaging. It's not near as accurate in its placement as the S08 or DuDu, but is still really good with its imaging, and it's not three blob or stuttering, jittering, moving around on stage. It tracks things very well. Detail retrieval is good, not quite as good as the S08 and DuDu, and then the resolution is where the T10 kind of struggles a little bit. You have moments of splashiness, glariness, and harshness, especially in the uppers, and then you have that issue with the bass getting a little bogged down at times. Overall, tone and timbre is pretty natural. It's a little bit more natural than the DuDu is because it does have a little bit more note weight, and it at times in the uppers can have just a little bit of metallicism, but for the most part it is a solid performer when it comes to tone and timbre, not quite as off-putting as the DuDu. So overall, the Tin Hifi DuDu, the LetShuoer S08, and the ARTTI T10. I like all three mostly. They're solid performers in its price point. For me, I find that the LetShuoer S08 is the clear winner with its more neutral and natural presentation and excellent technical abilities. The ARTTI T10 is a very fun, engaging listen that will please most people, and it's not the most technically advanced planar IEM, but I think that it has that fun, engaging factor to it that most people are going to find pleasurable. And then the Tin Hifi DuDu I find is just the most challenging to appreciate with its peaky, more vivid, aggressive presentation. It works with some genres, but doesn't work with a lot of genres. And I find that it's easy to recommend the S08 and the T10, and I'm hesitant to recommend the DuDu. It's been Dave, the Honest Audiophile. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video. Speaking of next video, somewhere on the screen, subscription links and notification bells. If you haven't already, please check those off. Don't forget to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to the video, and check out all the links down below. There's all kinds of information down there regarding how you can contact the channel, follow the channel, support the channel. All that kind of stuff is listed down below. Speaking of supporting the channel, I want to thank my supporters through Patreon and YouTube memberships. Thank you very much for all that you provide to the channel. It's greatly appreciated. If you're interested in supporting the channel, there's various ways that you can do that through one-time gifts with PayPal, Venmo, and also YouTube, or you can do monthly subscriptions through Patreon and YouTube memberships, where you can get early access to videos, access to my private Discord server, and all kinds of other benefits. So if you're interested in supporting the channel, no matter whether it's one-time gifts or monthly subscriptions, it'd be greatly appreciated. Also down below, there's all kinds of other information, gear recommendations, music recommendations, and gear rankings, and all kinds of other things listed down below. And lastly, don't forget to enjoy the music, and that honesty is the best policy.